Hey there, beautiful people. Welcome back. I want to share something with you. So these beautiful golden seeds, they smell so delicious. These are fenugreek seeds, and they have supported breastfeeding women and mothers for thousands of years. They are an ancient plant, and it's both food and medicine. And really, it is so ancient and so important plant to our ancestors that it is one of the first plants that's ever been written about in recorded history in ancient Egypt. And every herb book on my shelf, this is just a small sample of herb books on my shelf, but every herb book on my shelf that mentions fenugreek highlights and exalts fenugreek for its ability to support breastfeeding women and to support lactation. But so then the question is, why are so many modern women so concerned about fenugreek? Like, what are their concerns? I mean, are there dangers for fenugreek seeds? I mean, are there dangers? Are their concerns valid? And so I want you to watch today's episode of Apothecary Wisdom to find out. Because what I'm going to cover today is I want to teach to you and share with you why this ancient plant is still helping our modern women and still supporting women to breastfeed their babies and make abundant milk supply that's thick and rich and healthy and delicious. But I also want to talk about why women think they need to boost their supply in the first place, and then also to discover what the concerns of fenugreek are. And I want to determine, is fenugreek right for you at this point of time in your life? So go ahead, push like and subscribe to this video and to this channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell for those of you that are watching on YouTube. That way you'll know that every time we release a new video, you'll know about it. And you can also join us live every Thursday on Facebook and on Instagram. And all of our videos will be uploaded onto the YouTube channel on Fridays. Okay? So this is a live video. I'm in front of the camera. Heaven's behind the camera. So I encourage you, even though I'm not going to stop in my talking, that to ask questions and post comments. And if this is our first time meeting, my name is Maria Chaudhry. I'm a midwife. I'm an herbalist. And as a midwife, I've attended hundreds of home births. And as an herbalist, I've taken care of those families and my own family and created an herb company. And we specialize in herbal remedies for fertility and menstruation, birth, pregnancy, postpartum, breastfeeding, and for children's health. You can learn more about us on our website on birthsongbotanicals.com. But let's get into it, okay? Let's talk about fenugreek. Because fenugreek is probably one of the most well-known and most widely trusted herbs that supports women's breast health and lactation, right? And so this whole video, I want to highlight and promote and talk about why fenugreek is great for lactation. And I also want to embody the wisdom from the herbalists and from the midwives that have come before us since the beginning of time, right? And I want to carry on their message, okay? And we're standing in this modern world, so we need to adapt and adjust, right? So I want to talk about that. So fenugreek originated in the Fertile Crescent. And the reason I want to give you a little history is because when you know where you're from, it kind of gives you a sense of where you are and where we're going, right? So I don't want to linger too long in the history, but I think it's important. So when you think about fenugreek, think of the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, the beginning, right? And it's the beginning of humanity and of culture, and it is the beginning of written medicine and written documents. And so the first time that they found fenugreek to be written about was in a document in Egypt, and it's called the Ebers Papyri, and it has several herbs in this document. And it talked about fenugreek in 1500 BC. And it talked about how fenugreek was an herb that supported women to help them with labor and to induce labor, right? And so then fenugreek, years later, finally migrated to the Far East, and then it made its way into the traditional Chinese medicine, Apothecaries and Wisdom, and it's written about extensively in their literature, and it's for abdominal pain and for swelling and for cramps and digestion. And then eventually it made its way all the way to the United States, to us, to North America. And then we tend to recognize it and work with fenugreek as a hormone regulator and as a galactagogue. A galactagogue is an herb that helps support your body to make a bunch of milk, right? So when I close my eyes, if you've heard any of my other videos, you know I like to have a personal connection. I like to have a personal connection with you and with the plants, right? And with nature. And so when I close my eyes and I think about fenugreek and I smell the seeds and I look at this golden color and I think of its origin and I think of what its purpose is to help laboring women and breastfeeding moms, I close my eyes and I immediately see the statue. You can see her. The statue of the woman. It is an ancient Greek goddess, and she has like 100 breasts and like milk is pouring out. So if there could be like an embodiment of this plant, my imagination goes to that statue. And it makes sense because that statue came from Greece, and this is a plant from the area. Okay, a little bit more about the plant. So think about fenugreek, and it's an annual. I want to tell you a little bit about the plant and how it grows. It's an annual, and it's a legume, and it's great for crops, like ground cover, right? And when it grows, it's thick and has little leaves, and it could, maybe some people would think it looks like clover, right? And so it's what used to be called Greek hay. And so it's also fodder for livestock. But the whole part of the plant, the whole aerial part of the plant is beneficial. And currently in modern world, they grow it for commercial use in all throughout Turkey and throughout India and throughout China. That's where the biggest crops are. Okay, and I want to say something else. You know, in the world of herbs, there is sometimes this, we have ancient wisdom, and then everybody wants to have like current science documentation. I get that, right? So the FDA has recognized fenugreek to be both food, medicine, and flavoring. And the FDA lists fenugreek as a substance. It's called generally regarded as safe. So when you see GRAS, generally regarded as safe, that's a term from the FDA. So fenugreek is in that category. Also, there is another organization, it's called the German Commissioner E, and they create all these monographs about herbs, and what they do, they write about them, they illustrate them, they photograph them, and they want to share and express the safety and the efficacy and the evidence based on the herbs. And so fenugreek has been recognized as an herb that is safe for breastfeeding, and it's been approved for breastfeeding. It also has been approved for other things, but in the scope of this conversation, we're going to talk about it for breastfeeding. Okay, so like I said before, all parts of the plant, the aerial parts of the plant are beneficial. So when you think about the leaves, think about the leaves as food, right? And they go great in curries and in salads. And really the seeds are flavoring and can be food also. It smells really delicious, like maple syrup, and it's really sweet and great in curries. But when you think about the medicinal part of the plant, we're always referring to the seed and not the leaves. And so when we're talking about fenugreek as medicine, they harvest the seeds, and then you can do a whole bunch of things with it. Some people harvest the seed and they make topical applications for swelling and for inflammation, or you drink it as teas or infusions for digestive issues and for lowering your blood sugar and hormone balance, but then also for lactation. And in lactation, people tend to drink it in teas or have capsules or tinctures, or some people have little powdered tablets also. But here's the deal, like there hasn't been an official study about fenugreek in terms of lactation. However, the FDA recognizes it, the German Commissioner E recognizes it, and women, millions of women for thousands of years have had benefits, so the evidence is pretty convincing. Okay? But let's get started to talk about like how it relates to lactation, because I get questions all the time from women that are concerned about their milk supply. And now that I'm like an internet midwife, like I'm on the YouTube channel and I'm not sitting on the couch with the person like I used to be, now I'm giving information sometimes to people via distance. And so always my first recommendation for any person that is struggling with milk supply is to visit with a lactation consultant or with a La Leche League leader. I mean, these women are amazing. They are so committed to your breastfeeding success. They have tons of practical knowledge, personal knowledge usually, and practical tips and skills that you can apply right away. And they can determine if you're having a perceived problem or a real problem. And if you're having a concern about your breastfeeding and your breast milk supply, make an appointment with one of them right away, okay? And then also, if you feel like you have a good supply going, but then you're about to go back to work and you want to like stock your freezer, I would also make an appointment with the lactation consultant, because they can help you with a pumping schedule and they can help you with introducing the bottle. So either way, your first step, your first relationship to establish is with your baby and with your body, and then seek a lactation consultant. Okay. Before you start taking any supplements, you've already talked to a lactation consultant. You already are going to rule out if you're having a perceived supply issue or a real supply issue. So, because what's happening is, honestly, and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, and at the same time, not too bad because it's fixable, but so many women are concerned about their milk supply, and they're really concerned about it, when really what's happening is completely normal, right? And what's happening is they don't really have a full understanding about the dynamics of milk supply and its ebb and flow, and they also don't have realistic expectations of the herbs. And so what these women need is moral support and education. And so your lactation consultant will help you with that, and then we're here to help you too, and actually so are the herbs. But I want to talk about like what is low milk supply, like what causes it. And so when we're thinking about low milk supply, you know, this is a multifactorial issue. There's usually not a one-size-fits-all answer. And I'm an herbalist, right? And I'm a midwife, and so I want to acknowledge the herbs, and I acknowledge that the herbs are a really empowering place and piece of the puzzle, because you take a proactive role for your health care. Yet, I want to underline, I even highlighted it on my page, it's essential that you have a realistic understanding of the breastfeeding relationship and a realistic understanding of the herbs, because it is not realistic to expect to take a few fenugreek tablets or capsules or a few drops of a tincture or drink a cup of tea and then expect some radical change and expect it to fix your problem, because it's not going to fix your problem. The fenugreek, these teas and tinctures are all going to be great for the woman that wants to stock her freezer, right? Because she's going back to work and she wants to pump a bunch of milk, right? That's going to be great for that. But what if you're having a real breastfeeding problem, right? And you take all the fenugreek, and really what happens is it puts a mask on the real problem. It covers it up, and so then it's harder to decipher what's happening, and then it perpetuates and prolongs your problem, right? So let's see what are some real breastfeeding problems and what are some perceived breastfeeding problems. Okay? So I'm actually going to start with the 3 perceived breastfeeding problems. Okay, the first problem that is a perceived problem is that what's actually happening is your breast milk supply seems to have dropped, right? And what's actually happening is it's not that you have a low supply, it's just that your breast milk supply is now regulating. Let me explain. During the first 3 months of breastfeeding, your body wants to overproduce. It wants to make a lot of milk, a ton of milk, to ensure the survival of your baby. And it's all about supply and demand. The more your baby nurses, the more milk you make. And in the beginning, your breasts are full and they're engorged and you're making a ton of milk, right? And then about 3 months later, your body starts to become in sync with your baby, in tune. You start to harmonize with your baby. And your body doesn't need to make excess. Why do extra work than I have to do? I'm going to just work efficiently and wisely, and I'm going to make, the body's thinking, I'm going to make enough milk for the baby for what the baby needs. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to meet the baby's needs. So a person that is exclusively breastfeeding and spends a lot of time with their baby, they might notice this, but not to the same degree as a person that's pumping. A person that's pumping milk is going to see something like, oh wow, look at this, I pumped 4 ounces of milk, right? Or a lot, right? To me that's a lot. They're pumping all this milk, 4 ounces of milk, and now all of a sudden they're only pumping 3 ounces of milk or only 2 ounces of milk. And then when they see that reduction, that's concerning, and so then they start to become stressed out and they think they have a low milk supply, when really what they had was a regulation process. So there's that. That's a perceived problem. Another perceived problem is when a woman starts her menstruation, or right before she starts her period, her hormones start to fluctuate. And she has a temporary dip in her supply. But this is normal, and in a few days, your supply will bounce right back. Okay, but it seems really concerning because you have all these hormones fluctuating through your body, and that's making everything stressful. So I've written a blog post and made a whole video about menstruation and breastfeeding and when your period's going to come back, and some tips for that, and that's linked down below. Okay, the third perceived problem happens when your baby starts to go through a growth spurt. So your baby starts to go through a growth spurt, and they're just nursing all the time just to help them grow. And if you want to determine if that's what's happening, I have a whole other post for you. That's also linked below. It's called How to Know If My Baby's Having a Growth Spurt. So check that one out. But before we go any further of talking about the real, genuine concerns, put your comments in the down below, and I want to hear from you about what are your concerns about your breast milk? What are your concerns about your supply? What challenges are you facing? And have you already worked with Fenugreek? And is any of this like resonating with you so far? Put that in the comments. And now we're going to go a little deeper into the 4 real reasons for a supply, because the genuine reasons, they need to be addressed right away. So the first reason is the baby has a poor latch. Now the poor latch could be just because you're not quite in sync yet of knowing the best position of how to get the baby belly to belly and how to open their mouth and get their tongue where it needs to be. So it might be something simple. Or it might be that they have a tongue tie or a lip tie, and the baby can't open its mouth and it can't extend its tongue long enough, far enough, and it can't suck the milk in strong enough. And if that's the case, you need to get that looked at and revised, and clip the tongue and clip the lip, and then you have to do the work, and it's a challenging thing. I know it hurts, but you have to massage and make sure that the tongue tie doesn't re-establish and regrow. Right? So that's a big issue. And then another issue is there could be birth trauma, residual birth trauma from the birth, right? They could have some torticollis, and maybe they can't turn their head really well, or they're just a little misaligned, and they might need to have some chiropractic care or some craniosacral care to help them get in alignment, right? So all of those are issues with the baby that need to be addressed right away. And down below in the links, because here's the thing, they need to be addressed right away, because what happens when the baby's not sucking appropriately? You have terrible, painful, cracked, sore nipples. You're making a ton of milk and the baby isn't able to get it out, so you have breast engorgement, which is called mastitis, very intense. And then your supply drops, right? And it's just like, that's a whole emotional roller coaster. So down below, I have a bunch of resources for you. There's a blog post about lip ties. There's a blog post for you about mastitis. There's a blog post for you about cracked, sore nipples. And there's a blog post for you about how to increase your milk supply quickly. That's all below. So that's your first, number one, most genuine reason, is the baby has a poor latch. The next reason is from the mom's perspective, is the mom isn't having enough skin-to-skin time with the baby. Maybe she has to go back to work. Maybe she's separated from her baby for some reason. So she doesn't have enough skin-to-skin time, or because she has to go back to work, her pump schedule is way off, and so she's not able to pump in the right amount of time. And so if that's your case, then down below there's a post for you for pumping moms, how to pump when you go back to work. Okay? And then the third third problem is, this is another problem, and it's like, postpartum moms, girls, I love you. You're notoriously taking care of everybody else and not yourself, and you're not eating enough, and you're not drinking enough. And really, like, if you're gonna make food and it's liquid food to feed another person, then you're gonna have to eat and you're gonna have to drink. And I know I've heard hundreds of you, thousands of you tell me that you don't have an appetite. Like, I just don't have the appetite right now. And so if that's the case, then Fenugreek's going to help you out in one way, because Fenugreek is an appetite stimulant, but what it does is it lowers your blood sugar. So it's a catch-22. So if you haven't been eating all day and then you take Fenugreek and your blood sugar drops, you're going to feel like crap. But it will stimulate your appetite, so you need to eat. And on the back of every one of my little products, it says take with food, because I need you to eat. You need to eat. Your baby needs to eat. And so down below, there are two posts. One is for breastfeeding nutrition, and the other one is healthy snacks, like easy one-hand snacks for breastfeeding moms. So you want to get that. And then the fourth other issue that's a real genuine issue is that the mother might be having an underlying medical condition. Like, she might have diabetes, or she might have hypothyroid, or an endocrine disruptor issue such as PCOS. If you have any one of those conditions, you need to be under the care of a skilled care provider that understands what you're going through, your state, like that you're postpartum and that you're breastfeeding, and so they can really safely and effectively guide you. Right? And so that's another thing I probably should have told you. When you go back, when you talk to your lactation consultant, talk to them about your underlying conditions, your health issues, and also talk to them about the medications that you're already taking, so they can help you. Okay. So once you have determined, do I have a perceived issue that I can work through? Or do I have a real urgent issue that needs to be addressed right away? Once you have ruled out those things, now it's time to start looking to herbs, right? Now it's time to start looking to Fenugreek. And so I'm not going to spend a long time talking about my products here, because I really want to talk more about the plant and with low milk supply. But I will say Fenugreek can be something that you have on its own. Like, you can see little capsules. I don't have them, but you have little capsules that's just Fenugreek. Or you can blend it with other herbs. That's what I choose to do in my practice for a bunch of reasons, and you'll find out as we go on. Just briefly, the Nursing Nectar breastfeeding tea, it's a tea. So when you drink a lot of tea, that helps you with your hydration. So that's really essential. Fenugreek is a galactagogue. It's going to help make a bunch of milk. But it's also blended with herbs that are relaxing and herbs that are really beneficial for your digestion. So anytime that you can be hydrated, you can be relaxed, and you can digest your food, that means you can absorb all the nutrients and all the vitamins and minerals and utilize them effectively. That's going to help every area of your life, right? So think of breastfeeding tea as like health maintenance. It's not going to boost your supply. It's going to maintain your supply and maintain your health and keep you relaxed and calm and help you have regular bowel movements and help you have peace in your life, which is a good thing. Whereas Let There Be Milk, these over here, these are far more concentrated, they're more potent, they're stronger, right? These are for the woman that needs to boost her supply right away. She needs to pump, she needs to stock her freezer, she's nursing twins, she needs to make milk, right? And so Let There Be Milk is a way to like increase your supply more quickly. They can stand alone, like you can just have just the tincture or the capsule or just the tea, or you can combine them, right? Whatever works best for you. There's links to all the descriptions and everything. They're all down below, okay? But the big question of the day, of the hour, is like, is fenugreek the right herb for you right now in this stage of your life? Because here, look, like I'm standing in an apothecary in front of how many? I don't know, about 50 herbs here. Right? And so you have to think about it. Every herb has its zone of genius, its greatness, right? Not all the herbs are the same. And not any one herb, there's no one herb that's appropriate for every single person in every single situation. Because if that was the case, I would be standing in front of one huge jar of just one herb, right? So we have to assess the situation. So simply put, fenugreek is perfect, is right for you. Go for it. If you're returning back to work and you need to boost your supply, and you're separated from your baby and you need to boost your supply. If you're trying to stock your freezer, if you feel like you just want to maintain a supply, and if you're tandem nursing, right? And if you just feel like everything's running low, it's fine for you. However, I want you to listen. Pay attention. There are some cautions. Fenugreek is not for you here's the thing, fenugreek is a legume. It's in the peanut family. So if you have peanut allergies, then fenugreek's not for you. It's in that same family. Also, if you have diabetes or you're insulin dependent, you need to be under the guidance of a healthcare practitioner, because this is, from my perspective, granted, I'm not a doctor. Fenugreek helps lower blood sugar. So it depends on, is fenugreek right for you? It depends on what side of the fence you're on if you're having blood sugar issues, right? If you have really high blood sugar, maybe it's going to help regulate your blood sugar. If you have really low blood sugar and you take more fenugreek, you're going to feel terrible and feel nauseous, right? So fenugreek influences your blood sugar, and as a safe conversation, if you're insulin and you're diabetic, fenugreek might not be the thing. Talk to your doctor. Also, if you're pregnant, so fenugreek is known to help women in labor. That's when they're finishing their pregnancy. One of the reasons it works so well is for lactation is because it has an effect of smooth muscle. So your breast tissue is smooth muscle. So are your intestines, and so is your uterus. And so anything that stimulates contractile response of smooth muscle while you're pregnant isn't the right herb for you. Also, because I just talked about how fenugreek lowers your blood sugar, in early pregnancy, when you're just finding out you're pregnant and your hormones are like skyrocketed concentrated, you're having morning sickness. And a big reason you're having morning sickness is because your blood sugar plummets, right? So if you were to take fenugreek in your early pregnancy, you would have nausea and vomiting because your blood sugar drops, right? So don't do that. Um, what else? Another reason is if you have hypothyroid issues, because what fenugreek can do is it can lower the hormone T3. Also, if you have estrogen dominant issues such as PCOS, this is a plant that's a legume. Legumes like red clover and soy, they have phytoestrogens in them. So if you're estrogen dominant, you don't need more estrogen, right? So consider that. And then also, there are two known herb-drug interactions. The first one is with blood thinners, and the most common medications are warfarin and heparin. So if you're on blood thinners, you don't want to have fenugreek. And also if you have the classification of medications, they're antidepressants. They're called MAOIs, and they are contraindicated. So essentially the moral of the story with herbs and medications are, if you're taking medications, you always want to double check and make sure your medication is compatible with the other medications and with the herbs that you're taking. And those, the heparin and the antidepressants, those are often on a list of don't blend well with other things. So having that in your awareness. There's another little consideration to think about with fenugreek is that GI upset. So in a small number of people, the herb itself can cause GI upset, and then like in a bad, worst case scenario, it causes diarrhea, right? But I want to say something. When you take a capsule of herbs, doesn't really matter what herb it is, but you know, the one, the capsule just has the powdered herbs in it. You're taking fiber, and then you take handfuls of fiber, and you already have a little GI issue. It's going to cause you to have loose stools. It doesn't really matter what herb is inside of it. That in and of itself, the fiber in and of itself, is going to cause you to have GI upset. Plus, fenugreek is known to be a digestive food, and so have that awareness. That is why we don't have just fenugreek as an offering for you. That's why we blend fenugreek with other herbs. For example, in our Let There Be Milk, we know that fenugreek has a small potential of being a cause diarrhea. So we combine it with another galactagogue, another herb that produces breast milk, called blessed thistle. And blessed thistle not only helps produce breast milk, but it's an anti-diarrheal. So they work together for your GI tract and for your milk production. So it's blended together on purpose. Okay, so what is it? What are the most likely results from you taking fenugreek? Like if you were to take fenugreek, what's going to happen? Dun 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 dun. Okay, be warned. If you're a lactating mom, be warned. What's going to happen most likely is that you're going to make a bunch of milk. That's the most likely scenario. You're going to make a bunch of milk, your breasts are going to be full, and then you're going to have a really forceful letdown. You went from being empty and now boom, and then when your milk comes out, shoots out, right? So remember that when you're taking fenugreek and then your baby gets gassy and the baby gets fussy, it can be from the herb, but more than likely what it's from is that the baby is nursing and the milk is pouring out, and so the baby is guzzling, they're gorging themselves, right? The milk is just pouring out, they're gorging themselves, and so now they just expanded their little bellies, and now they're gassy and fussy. Not because of the herb, but because they ate too much. So when you have a gassy, fussy baby with green bowel movements, it's not that the herb did something wrong. It's really that the herb worked. It made a bunch of milk for you. So what you can do is you can, when you have that big letdown, you can pump some off the top, right? You can catch it in a milk saver. You can put it into a cloth, right? Just that is a misunderstanding of something saying, oh, it doesn't work because my baby has green bowel movements. It just means your baby has a lot of foremilk, right? So I wanted to let you know that. And I want to remind you one other thing is, like, I feel as a midwife and as an herbalist, I always feel like my job is to protect, right? To protect the women and protect birth and protect the babies and protect the lineage and protect the mothers, right? Protect. And so I understand that we're adapting and changing. At the same time, I want to remind you that, like, the herb isn't our problem. Our problem from my perspective is a lack of understanding of breastfeeding, a lack of understanding of the normal ebb and flow of the milk supply, and that it's dynamic and it's fluctuating, it's not the same. And also that we as humans, we are adapting and changing at such a rapid rate that, and we're responding to our environment, to the contaminants in our environment, and we are growing in ways that are not healthy, right? So our grandmothers and our foremothers, they didn't have the same levels of, they didn't have the same high rates of diabetes and of PCOS and of hypothyroidism. And they didn't have all the antidepressants, right? I'm not saying that their life was great or perfect, right? But I am saying their oceans weren't filled with plastic bottles. Their air wasn't filled with exhaust from all the vehicles and smog. Their groundwater wasn't contaminated from the byproducts of fracking. Their crops weren't sprayed with Monsanto, and they didn't have monocrops like we do now, right? They had hardships, right? They did. But they were able to birth their babies, and they were able to breastfeed their babies. And fenugreek has been with us since we were in the Fertile Crescent. Fenugreek, since it's a legume, it's a nitrogen fixer. It has not only nourished the soil, but it has fed our livestock and our animals, and which feeds us. It has fed us directly with our leaves and with the food. It has supported us to give birth, and it has supported us to feed our babies. We not only survive, but we thrive because of plants like fenugreek. So I want to leave you with that, okay? When you remember how important and how important these plants are to us, and they have always been to us. And so when we quickly turn away and be like, we don't need it anymore, that's kind of like, we do. So I'd love to hear from you. Put it in the comments below, like, okay, so if you've tried fenugreek, what was the outcome? What were the challenges? What were the downsides? What were the wins? Tell me about the wins. Show me those bottles of milk, and show me those fat babies. Show me all that good stuff too, right? Share it all. Remember, down below you have a ton of breastfeeding resources to click and to read and to support you. Remember, we're here for you. Girl, you've got this. You know, we're here for you. The herbs are here for you. Your baby's here for you. You're doing this as a team. And take a deep breath. Love yourself. Love that baby. Let your love and your milk flow. And if you like this video, share it with your friends. And give me a thumbs up. And push like and subscribe. I really appreciate your support. And until next time, my friends, drink deep and always walk in beauty.